Good evening. Welcome to SAP Center. On behalf of Shark Sports and Entertainment, you're at the San Jose Mayoral Forum. My name is Scott Neese. I'm the CEO of the San Jose Downtown Association, and I will be your moderator tonight. We are thrilled to have such a wonderful turnout. Thank you all for being here this evening. Myself and most of our downtown members are very excited about these four candidates and what their vision is for the future of San Jose. You're going to get to hear a little bit about that tonight. Let me introduce our candidates to you in the order that they've been randomly selected to answer each of the questions that we're going to ask tonight. To my right, San Jose City Councilperson District 3, Raul Peralez. Santa Clara County Supervisor Cindy Chavez. San Jose City Councilman District 10, Mahan. San Jose City Council Member District 6, Deb Davis. And they're also joined on stage by the president of Shark Sports and Entertainment, Jonathan Becker. So we're all gathered here to listen to the candidates about what their vision, what their thinking is for making San Jose a wonderful place for us to live, work, and play. And this building is one of the places that San Jose plays. It hosts concerts. It obviously is the home of the San Jose Sharks. Nice to see some teal jerseys out there. I was going to wear mine, but we didn't want to give home court advantage here. It's also a place that supports more than 1.5 million visitors a year into this building. And what's interesting about tonight's mayoral forum is we're going to focus a bit with our questions on what the building means for San Jose. And to kind of set the stage, Jonathan Becker is going to make a few opening remarks.
Thanks, Scott. So I want to add my personal thanks for all of you showing up today to hear a little bit more about the future of this building, SAP Center. But I'd like to especially thank the four candidates. I know your schedules are incredibly busy. I think I heard you have like 18 more of these to do in the next 3 or 4 days. And the opportunity for you to say your views on how to protect one of the city's most valuable assets is valuable to me, to everyone in the audience, and to those 1.5 million people that come into our building every day. So let me quickly summarize what we think are the 3 key issues. First, and maybe most importantly, for the last 30 years, Shark Sports and Entertainment has strongly supported the city during its evolving view of what should happen in the Diridon area. Let me say that in a more positive way. Despite what people have said, we are not against any of the developments that are happening and plan to happen in downtown San Jose. In fact, we're astonished and welcoming to all the benefits that they will give to the city and to its residents. However, we do have some concerns about specific aspects for each of the projects. And frankly, more importantly, and I think this is the big story to remember, we're worried about the collective impact about all these projects which are done independently and not together, both while they're happening and when they're done. And while most of the press is about one project in particular, Google's Downtown West, the reality is there's lots and lots and lots of projects. There's acres of projects happening in and around here. And to date, there is no central coordination plan. And without a central coordination plan with specific actions, not vague assurances, but specific actions, it could be that all 4 sides of the arena are blocked simultaneously, and access here would be nearly impossible. So that's the first. The second issue is the potential severe reduction in the street network. Now, yes, BART coming to downtown San Jose, electrification of Caltrain, and who knows, maybe high-speed rail. All those things together could be really good and could dramatically increase the use of public transportation. And if that happens, that's fantastic. Let me again be clear. We're pro-public transportation. But even in the most optimistic numbers coming from the most pro-public transportation, still roughly 50% of more of the people coming to this building will need to rely on automobiles. Public transportation doesn't go everywhere in the Bay Area. It doesn't go to places like Campbell, Los Gatos, Saratoga. It doesn't reach all the areas in South County like Morgan Hill, Gilroy. It doesn't go to Sacramento. It just will still need some cars. And it's not just about SAP Center. The Diridon Station Area Plan says that when all this is done, the increase in number of visitors coming in to the downtown will be somewhere between 5 to 10 times more visitors. And most people estimate about half of those people will come in with cars. And let's say we have 2.5 times as many cars as we have now, and we reduce the street network by half, that math doesn't seem to work. That feels like a recipe of a disaster, not just for us, but for all the businesses. So that's the second point. And the third point, yes, we do care about parking. Yes, we do count the number of parking, but it's third. If you go back to the Diridon Station Area Plan, it estimates roughly 200,000, that's a big number, new visitors coming here. And those 200,000 visitors, if you look at that plan and the associated documents from the developers, roughly 1 in 10 of them will be allowed to park. That number feels low to me. Not just park for us, park for restaurants, park for offices, park for housing, park for all the things that come down here. And we worry that's too few. That includes the train station. And we've already seen on the East Bay what happens if there's not enough parking at a train station and what it does to people's personal property. So we worry about a mitigation plan for all these things collectively. We worry about the reduction in the street network, and yes, we worry about the number of parking spots, but that's third. So I'll end with 2 thoughts here. One is, somehow the narrative has been us versus them. That the future of the SAP Center can only happen at the expense of these projects, or these projects can't happen and have a thriving SAP Center. That's a false dichotomy. We can have both. Not at the current course and speed, not as the plans are right now, but with modest changes. So I'll ask each of you one small favor. I realize whoever of you becomes the next mayor of San Jose, and I'll be proud of each of you, whoever ends up winning, you have a lot of tough things on your plate. You've got to deal with crime, you've got to deal with homelessness, you've got to deal with the economy, you've got to deal with those are critically important things. But that's not what the primary discussion is about today. The primary discussion for today is about this building. The building that literally put San Jose on the map, answered the question of, do you know the way to San Jose? A building that continues to contribute $10 million, $20 million, $40, by the city's own numbers, and importantly, doesn't use a dime of taxpayer dollars. I think it's the only public venue that doesn't use any taxpayer information. So let's have our cake and eat it too. Let's find a way to protect this building. Back to you, Scott.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. And let me quickly cover the format. So we have a predetermined order. Each of you are going to get to go first as we go through the eight questions here. You're going to get to have an opening comment. Then we have 6 questions that we've already provided to each of you. And then you're going to get a closing statement as well. Jonathan Becker may interject, although I can't see how he can possibly add on what he's already talked about here. Yes. There is a clock here. Each of you have 90 seconds. You don't have to use the whole 90 seconds if you want, but at the end of 90 seconds, I will be interjecting so we can keep it moving to be fair to all the candidates. And you're all pros and you've been doing this and you know the drill here. So let's get started in the order. Councilmember Davis, you get to start with your opening remarks. And we will start the 90 seconds as soon as you turn on your mic.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm Councilwoman Dev Davis. I have been a council member for over 5 years now, and one of the big things that I've learned is that big problems get bigger during difficult times. That's certainly been true during the pandemic. And another thing I've learned is that even in the worst of times, good things can happen when we work together. And I think we're going to be talking about that a lot tonight. San Jose is facing big problems. I think we all know that. Homelessness and public safety among them. And City Hall really must begin to help, not hinder our growth. It is time for us to restore San Jose's status. We must be a safe, clean, and thriving city. To restore San Jose as mayor, I will focus on rebuilding public safety, protecting our single-family homes, and tackling homelessness and blight. I want to say also that I will not waste time on costly and ineffective policies like new gun owner mandates and non-citizen voting in local elections. The future of our city is just too important to waste time, and that is why I will be focusing on those priorities. Thank you.
Councilmember Mahan.
Good evening. It's great to be here with all of you. I want to thank the Sharks and the SAP Center for hosting us this evening, and I want to thank all of you for being here. I really believe that we get a government that we deserve in the sense that it reflects how engaged, how informed we are, and what we ask of our candidates and our elected officials. So I appreciate your civic participation tonight. My name is Matt Mahan, and I represent District 10, Almaden Valley and Santa Teresa, where my wife Sylvia and I are raising our two little kids, Nina and Luke. And I grew up over the hill in a little town called Watsonville in a working class neighborhood, came here as a scholarship student to Bellarmine, taking buses 4 hours a day, came back after college as a public school teacher in Eastside San Jose, and then built a couple of software companies here. And for me, San Jose has always been a city of opportunity, and that's what I want to ensure it continues to be for future generations, although these days it doesn't feel that way so much. I am running for mayor because we're going in the wrong direction on a lot of issues: homelessness, trash, crime, affordability. And having now been at City Hall for just over a year, I'm convinced that we have to be radically more focused and accountable if we're going to solve these problems. I think we have to set goals, measure performance, and if we can't deliver results, we shouldn't get raises as elected officials. And I think we need real culture change in local government if we're going to turn the corner on some of these challenging problems we face. Thanks again for being here.
Supervisor Chavez, your opening statement.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you all for taking time away from your families to participate in what I think is a very important discussion about the future of San Jose. I particularly wanted to say thank you to the Sharks and the SAP Center for hosting us tonight. I thought I would just take a minute to talk a little bit about why I chose public service. Growing up, my father was a carpenter, my mother was a teacher's aide, and we grew up in a house where everybody was welcome to come after school, and if somebody in our neighborhood needed help, my parents were there to help. I can think of lots of examples of watching my parents do kind of amazing things, but two was that we had a neighbor that was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of cancer, and that family had an opportunity to get experimental treatment, and they had 3 little girls that they needed to leave with somebody while they were waiting for their family to fly in, and my parents said yes. And I can look back over my childhood and honestly say that we had individuals and families living with us while they were saving for their own home almost all of my growing up. And what I learned from my parents was that if you were going to be part of a community, you had to be part of making it better, that we all had an obligation not just to help ourselves, but to help others. Because of that, I went on to run a nonprofit. I was a leader in the labor movement. I served on the San Jose City Council, and I'm currently a member of the Board of Supervisors.
Councilmember Peralez.
Well, good evening, and yes, I echo the thanks for you being here tonight, giving up your evening to learn a little bit about us as candidates, and thank you to Shark Sports and Entertainment as well. My name is Raul Peralez, and I am a proud lifelong resident here in the city of San Jose. also a lifelong Sharks fan, having been 11 years old when the Sharks came here into San Jose. I grew up in a humble working-class immigrant family, and I'm proud to be the first in my family to be able to graduate from college right here at San Jose State University. I went on to be a high school substitute teacher and went back to school actually to become an emergency medical technician. And my first job was actually here, working at the arena. After that, I went on to be a San Jose police officer where I served our city for 8 years in a full-time capacity, and I continue to serve today as a reserve officer. In 2014, I ran for San Jose City Council, and I'm proud to be the representative now of the District 3 Downtown Core for the last 7 years, up until redistricting, having represented here the Sharks Tank. And I'm running because the challenges that we face in our city are very personal to me. My wife and I are raising our 3.5-year-old son, our 8-week-old daughter, and I want to be able to take on the challenges that we face in our city to be able to reverse the trend on homelessness, be able to make San Jose a city where everybody can afford to live, make us the safest big city in America again, and be able to ensure as we grow, we do so sustainably and equitably so that we can create a city for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for the opening statements. Our first question, and Councilmember Peralez, you're going to get to lead off now. What is the biggest challenge the city faces, and how do you, as mayor, plan to address it?
Well, of course, it's the development happening here next to SAP Center. No, actually, I would say the biggest challenge we face is with homelessness. And as your mayor, I would make that my priority issue. I would take responsibility for being able to turn around this trend and this crisis on homelessness. And number one, it would start with housing and shelter, something that for the last 7 years I have made a priority, and I'm proud to have developed more affordable units here in my district than in any other district in the city, addressing this challenge head on, developing the first 100% permanent supportive housing development to directly get 134 individuals off of the street and into shelter. But it's not just shelter and housing that we need. We need to be better coordinated on this effort. As mayor, I would also start a homelessness task force, ensure that we can work better together with our partners, like at the county, to address some of the underlying factors, like mental health and drug and alcohol addiction, so that we can get people the care and the service that they need while we are also sheltering them. Thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
Our toughest challenge is definitely homelessness, and I think we will all four say the same thing tonight about our toughest challenge. I think we have very similar ideas about how we're going to solve it. It does start with housing and different housing solutions, including interim solutions. We've built 345 units just over the 2 years of the pandemic on government-owned sites, and we also have numerous permanent supportive housing. What all of those things have to have in common, including safe parking and sheltering sites, everything has to have safety, sanitation, and services. And to do those three things together, the county and the city have to coordinate and collaborate. And we definitely need better collaboration. The county provides drug and alcohol treatment and mental health treatment, and the city provides the housing. And we work together to do that. We also have homelessness prevention programs, and we have to double down on that because we are able to keep people housed at a fraction of the cost that it takes to rehouse someone after they become homeless. It's very important to do that. We also honestly have to add a little tough love to our compassion. If you're offered housing and services, you can't be in our public spaces. They have to be publicly accessible to everyone.
Councilmember Mahan.
Our approach on homelessness is failing, frankly. We are halfway through our second 5-year plan to end homelessness in our county. We've spent billions of dollars and we're worse off than when we started. We are spending $850,000 a unit to build brand new apartments for the homeless. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year just managing the problem on our streets. And it's time that we actually treat this like the crisis that it is. I think a real solution looks like the city and county coming together to create a master plan in which we identify about 50 acres of publicly owned land spread out in different sites across the county, not just in San Jose, where we tend to concentrate our greatest challenges, but equitably spread out, to build modular units that are prefabricated and come off an assembly line at about $30,000 a piece. Today, we have just 13 beds for inpatient psychiatric care for every 100,000 people. Experts will tell you you need at least 50. We've underinvested in mental health care and addiction treatment. We need to expand programs that put people to work, give them jobs and dignity and income and an opportunity to reintegrate into society. And so, while I respect my colleagues here and their years of service in local government, I frankly think that our current strategies are not scaling, they're not cost effective enough, they're just not pragmatic enough if we really want to end street homelessness in our lifetimes. And so I'm looking to take us in a different, more pragmatic direction on this issue. Thank you.
Supervisor Chavez.
Jonathan, I broke your mic, sorry. The next mayor of San Jose is going to be facing so many tough issues: crime, housing, homelessness, the cleanliness of the city, being engaged in climate change. And one of the things that I just wanted to focus on, I was going to talk a little bit about how important it is that we're going to reinvest in public safety. The reason I think this is so important is it's a cornerstone of how people feel about the place that they live. First, we need to hire more officers, and it's going to cost us some money, but it's very much worth the investment. Second, we need to make sure that we're hiring non-badge staff. For example, our dispatch, when you call 911, most of those folks are working overtime because we don't have enough people to provide that support right now. We need to make sure we're hiring public safety officers, again, non-badge staff, to take responsibilities so that the leaders, the police officers, can deal with what is in front of them that are the most serious crimes. The other thing we need to do is continue to invest in partnership between the county and the city, where we now have a program called MCAT, where we can send 2 officers and mental health workers so we can stabilize folks and not have to put them in custody, but get them the services they need. Lastly, we need to make sure that officers aren't responding to calls they don't need to respond to, and using nonprofit partners to help us to respond to mental health issues. Thank you.
Our next topic, and Supervisor Chavez, you get to lead off, so hold on to that mic. This is focused on downtown. What is your vision for downtown San Jose, and how does the SAP Center and the Sharks franchise fit into it?
So the thing I love about San Jose, there are so many things, but when you think about San Jose and you think about downtown, it really is the gathering place for the city and for the region. It needs to be vibrant, healthy, connected, welcoming, safe, and clean. And what that means is our partners, like the SAP Center and all of the other partners, the Downtown Association, Team San Jose, all of those folks, the Sports Authority, I could go on, that have a role in bringing people downtown, need to have an opportunity to play a leadership role in talking about and thinking about what it looks like in the future. I think that's very important. I think one of the points that Jonathan raised earlier is the lack of engagement and the lack of coordination means that we have all of these different organizations kind of working on their own, and I think they do their best to coordinate and collaborate, but we really need them to be able to do that sort of on a moment's notice. I want to just add one point about why these institutions are so important to San Jose. People who love this city love it for many reasons. They love the school they live in, they love the street they grew up on, but they love the common experiences they have. They love coming to the Sharks. They love seeing concerts. They love going to a Giants game. And what that means is that the city needs to understand that these organizations are not just important for tourism and the economy, but they're important to help people fall in love with the place that they live. And I want to support that.
Councilmember Peralez.
Yeah, thank you very much, Scott. I grew up in West San Jose, but I always loved downtown, whether it was cruising my 65 Impala down Santa Clara Street or coming here for concerts and Sharks games. And this is where I wanted to move. And so after living in West San Jose for over 20 years, I moved into downtown, and that's where I've lived ever since. What I was attracted to was the big city. And we've sort of always been on that cusp of getting to that next step. And it's been terrific to be a representative here over the last 7 years. Pre-pandemic, we had some of the most growth and development that we've ever seen here, high-rise development, new businesses and restaurants, really a vibrant area that was thriving. And we've struggled now through the pandemic. And as you know, Scott, it's really a core focus of ours to get back on that path of vibrancy. And the SAP Center has been for decades and will continue to be a core element in creating that vibrancy, in bringing in people, thousands of people into our downtown core. When you come into downtown, the most exciting and vibrant nights are nights when there's a Sharks game or there's a concert going on and people are all in and around. So the SAP Center is a core element for me, and it is absolutely a part of that vision in a vibrant and thriving downtown, especially as we grow out here downtown west. You've been holding the anchor down here west of 87, and I'm excited about the growth and development that we'll see here in the years to come.
Councilmember Davis.
I'm going to figure out your order eventually and be ready. Sorry about that.
It's random.
My vision for our downtown and downtown west is the same as my vision for our city as a whole. We need to be safe, clean, and thriving. And that vision can only be realized if people live and work downtown. And that's why I'm so excited about the new developments that Jonathan mentioned, not just Google, but everything that's coming around downtown. Downtown is a place where fun events happen, and they're happening all the time, and people want to come downtown for events and also just to hang out. That's the vision, I would say. It hasn't always been the reality, and especially now as we're kind of emerging from the pandemic, I think it's harder and harder for people to want to come downtown. Our public spaces really need to be safe and clean for people to want to come back downtown. And we're taking a step now as a council to have our police officers do foot patrols downtown to help people feel safe coming back. But we also need to make sure that there's no camping in parks and trails and on sidewalks, because those public spaces have to be publicly accessible for all. And the Sharks obviously are a huge part of having people come downtown, putting on 150 events a year. The biggest draw is the SAP Center and the Sharks. And obviously they're a very important part of our downtown and its future.
Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. My vision for downtown is that it needs to be the cultural and economic center of Silicon Valley. And I would also say the residential center of Silicon Valley as well. You know, we talk a lot about bringing jobs and transit to downtown, and I think that's great. I think it's really important. Our city needs more jobs. We need to build our tax base. But I think the most transformative thing we can do to downtown is have people live in downtown. And we have one of the most sparsely populated downtowns in the country. If we can significantly increase the residential density of downtown, more people will be walking around during all times of the day and night, and I think the downtown will become safer and cleaner. Of course, we as a city have a responsibility for making the investments to support that. So fully staffing our police department, having those foot patrols, ensuring that we're supporting our local businesses downtown. But the single best thing we can do is bring more people downtown. On the Sharks and the SAP Center, I think it's critical that we support this incredible, I don't even want to call it a business, it's more than that. It's an institution that has done so much for our city. As the city grows up around it, we have to continue to embrace the arena and support its patrons, its fans, as people want to come and go. We need to make it easy and make sure that we manage this transition very carefully, which I know is more of what we're going to talk about this evening. Thank you.
I think we're figuring out the person who goes last goes first next, so keep that mic there. So you heard Jonathan talk about the dramatic transformation that's going to take place in the Dirdon area. If you are the mayor, what is your plan to help mitigate and manage these major construction projects and their impacts, especially for arena patrons?
Yeah, and thank you. As Jonathan said, there's a possibility here for a confluence of a lot of different development all around the arena happening at the same time. And I understand why that's a scary prospect. And I think the answer to that from a city perspective is, number one, we need to have a master plan in which we outline each of the investments that we anticipate moving forward, the rough timing, the impacts, and we're doing our best to coordinate when and where and how they're happening, and that the Sharks leadership is at the table every step of the way and understands when are these investments happening, how are we mitigating. I think it's critical that Sharks leadership has a point person at City Hall who has the experience and the authority to actually make decisions and call on and activate any department, whether it's transportation or SJPD or code enforcement, to make sure that people have access to and have a great experience coming to the arena no matter what's going on in the immediate vicinity. So we need to plan this out very carefully. We cannot damage businesses or cultural institutions in downtown as we grow. We have to grow responsibly, plan ahead, have a very open line of communication, and be extremely responsive. And that's why I think it's important that there's a development czar that you can call any day, any time of any day, to make sure that if construction equipment's in the way, that we get it moved before a game starts, for example.
Supervisor Chavez.
The construction that's going to be happening here is not just downtown West, and it's the Dearborn Arena Station, it's BART coming to San Jose. We're talking, the development up and down East Santa Clara Street for the next 10 to 15 years is going to be profound. And I say that because I think that it is a great idea to have a one number to call. But the bigger challenge we're going to have is coordinating all of that construction, because it's going to impact the SAP Center, it's going to impact neighborhoods, it's going to impact tiny businesses that have just been through heck with COVID. And so what this requires is for us to have a construction management plan for the city that takes in all of those different moving parts into account. And what it also means is that we've got to be really collaborative, because the thing to remember is that the good news is a good chunk of that money is going to be invested from the public sector, but a bunch of it's going to be private sector, which is exactly what we want. And we don't want to kill downtown while we're rebuilding downtown. So I think a construction management program that is really downtown wide is the only way we're going to be able to protect housing, businesses, the SAP Center, and any new innovation, anybody else who wants to make an investment.
Councilmember Peralez.
Well, thank you, Scott. And as you know, construction management of numerous projects in downtown is nothing new for me, as we've had, again, some of the most development in our downtown's history under my watch over the last 7 years. We actually have today a downtown construction manager, and it is something I've asked for, that in downtown West and the development everything happening west of 87, that we have somebody equal to that, as we heard my colleague mentioning that we have a need for. Absolutely. We have been managing the construction projects here in the downtown core, whether it's Adobe's Tower, J. Paul across the street, West Bank's development, and we've been doing so right in the middle of special events like having Christmas in the Park, the ice rink, and navigating the closures of streets, ensuring that we can keep pedestrian and bike access, ensuring that people can still get to and fro to all the events that they get to. So it would be no different here west of 87 as we manage and mitigate all of that. We need to ensure that people can still get safely to games and events, that they can get to work, that they can get to this train station, that they can get home, quite frankly. Because there's a lot of residents that live in and around here as well. And so absolutely the management of this plan is a key element, and we do need to ensure that we are coordinating all of those efforts together.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Communication and collaboration are essential to manage this transition. Of course, the city and Shark Sports and Entertainment need to continue to work together closely to ensure successful SAP Center events, and that's especially true during construction. Of course, we need a construction management plan for downtown West. And I know the city Public Works Department is already hiring a point person already to coordinate all those construction activities in this area and to work directly with Shark Sports and Entertainment. And the Department of Transportation will also, so there will be one point person for construction, and there also will be another point person for traffic management, and to ensure that we have adequate event parking throughout the whole time of construction, which is going to be a long time. And I think it's worth mentioning that there are going to be some impacts. I think it's important to just get that out there. Other arenas have been successful in urban environments, and to my knowledge, this is the only arena that is going to undergo a transformation from a suburban environment to an urban environment while staying in one place. So it is going to be a tricky business for sure, but having communication and collaboration all the way through, and I would also say trust amongst all the parties, is going to be important to ensure success.
Thank you. This next question is going to be about access. When we survey people who consume entertainment in the Bay Area, SAP Center is number one. You compare getting into Shoreline, Chase Center, Oakland Arena, the Coliseum. We are blessed how easy it is to get in and out of this building, and we want to see that continue. You heard Jonathan talk about some of the plans to reduce street capacity, and as mayor, with this extra density, with these changes in vehicle trips, how will people who have to drive to the building avoid gridlock when we have these plans to reduce the road capacity and the number of streets? Do you support maintaining existing street capacity for drivers to help mitigate traffic delays caused by all of this new growth? And Councilmember Davis, you were last, so that means you get to go first.
Well, the cheeky answer is the easiest way to avoid all that gridlock is to take public transit. And I think it's impossible actually to determine exactly right now, today, the number of trips that are going to be happening at the same time. So you mentioned the 200,000 trips, but we don't know what time of day all of those trips are going to be happening. And so we don't know what the street capacity will need to be. So I'm not in the business of making promises that I don't know that I can keep or that I'll even want to keep, even a few years down the road. And I also want to just talk about the street closures that we're talking about. Only a portion of Montgomery is going to be closing, and that'll be south of San Fernando. And north of San Fernando on Montgomery, the plan currently is to have a designated pickup and drop-off site for ride sharing, which I think is going to be a great way for people to get here and not have to worry about parking. And then the 50% reduction that was discussed refers to Barack Obama Boulevard becoming a two-way, but there's also a flex lane in the plan, and I support installing that flex lane to help manage with event traffic. And then we can talk about West Santa Clara Street and whether there will be bus rapid transit. I think we absolutely as a city have to hold the line on not having bus rapid transit until after BART comes in and determining whether or not we need that, and keeping the existing capacity for West Santa Clara Street throughout construction.
Councilmember Mahan.
So I've relied on public transit at many times in my life, and I'm a cyclist and I love walking. But I also think we have to recognize that we've spent 100 years building around the car, and we have to really thoughtfully and carefully transition and make sure that we don't leave other people behind or punish folks for owning a car. So I represent a district in South San Jose that 95% of people are car dependent because there aren't great alternatives. How many of you this evening came by car? Just quick show of hands. Okay, looks like 95% as well. So, I think my philosophy on this is we absolutely should invest in public transit, and we're blessed to have what's going to be one of the most important multimodal transit stations on the West Coast across the street here. We should absolutely invest in bikeability, walkability, and innovation in mobility. And I'm all for that innovation. That's what's made our valley great. But at the same time, we need to be data-driven and look at the experience of the people who need to get here or want to get here and still facilitate that and make it easy and convenient for people. We need to make sure there's enough throughput on the roads and enough parking to allow fans to still get here and to manage this transition carefully, responsibly, in a data-driven way, and not just try to force a transition by making the lives of car owners miserable. So we're gonna have to be practical and balanced in the way we move forward.
Supervisor Chavez.
So one of the biggest challenges that we're going to have is how we manage all of the different types of mobility. Now, what's going to be exciting about the Diridon station is eventually we'll have high-speed rail, BART, light rail, Caltrain, and buses. And the ability to be dropped off for kiss and rides, or what is that called? Well, anyway, where you get dropped off and get picked up. Don't kiss your Lyft driver. It's intended for somebody you're related to. But the point of it is that we're going to have to be very, very flexible about how we manage all of this, because one of the challenges is if you think about a bus is in traffic. If the streets are constrained, public transit, especially as buses, isn't moving faster than a car. So really looking at opportunities to both preserve and protect the mobility and the access is going to be critical. The other thing I would just add is, as it relates to micromobility, scooters, electric bikes and other opportunities, that really could alleviate quite a lot of pressure off of this facility. And even that, I would say, still has to be so coordinated and really thought through. And one of the challenges we have is that as we're going through the process of building out the Diridon station, it's not integrated enough yet. Like, we're still working with all these agencies to actually integrate the transit so it really works. And last, we have to coordinate it so it works for the facility.
Councilmember Peralez.
Yeah, thank you. I know Councilmember Mahan asked about how many people had driven here. I'm curious how many people have had their best memories of Candlestick Park, not going home afterwards and hanging out for 2 hours afterwards because you couldn't get out of there and tailgating with your dad. Yes, see, Dad. Thank you, Dad, for raising your hand. Those were some of my best memories. And so not always terrible in being able to get in and about. But I'll be a little bit more bold in my answer here, as I was in the questionnaire, as Jonathan knows, in saying the answer is no. And I don't think it matters who is actually mayor. I don't think we're going to be able to preserve the capacity for vehicles in and out of the area here. It's not realistic. Why? Because we need to expand the capacity for everything else, as Supervisor Chavez just said. Today, if you're on a bike and you're coming down Santa Clara Street, it's not very safe to be riding down into the area. And if you want to get in and out of there, you're on a scooter, you're walking, you want to come in by a bus. We want to create one of the richest and busiest multimodal transit hubs west of the Mississippi here. So we can't have a narrow focus on just the vehicle. We have to ensure that we are creating capacity for every single mode of transportation, which absolutely includes the vehicle. And I think it needs to have a very keen focus on events at the SAP Center, because we know there's a huge influx of cars coming in at the beginning, regardless of the investments that we're going to make here, and there'll be a huge influx coming out. And as Councilmember Davis said, we're planning that today. We're planning for ensuring that we can have some hybrid type of lanes where we can accommodate for that type of travel in and out.
We're going to talk about vehicles a little bit more. Oh, I'm Jonathan.
I promised I wouldn't chime in that much, but just one thing for each of the candidates to remember. There are some decisions you can undo 10, 20, 30 years down the road, and there are other decisions you can't. Once you remove a lane and build a house, apartment, a business, or whatever, you can't put it back again. So there are decisions you have to make now, even though some of the construction won't be done for 30 years, and others you can kick down the road. Remember that as whoever ends up being mayor.
This next question also deals with vehicles and how we park them. And as you heard, we're looking to really dramatically add density to this area around Diridon Station. And you heard Jonathan talk about the stats, the data that he's seen that the area is underparked. And the question for all of you as mayor is, where are all the proposed new drivers, as well as the existing arena patrons, going to park? Do you support continuing to provide parking for SAP Center close to the building. And we changed up again on the random order. Supervisor Chavez, you get to go first.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. I think that we need to make sure that we do have some parking close to the building, especially for people who are older and disabled and need access. I think that's very important. But I have to say that part of the reason downtown is so lively is because you bring in and have about a $200 million economic impact a year, and part of who benefits from that is the little restaurant next to the parking that people go to, and they have their own secret way of walking up to the building. And so I think that's one. I think the other thing we need to remember is with all the new buildings that are going to be built, it's going to create opportunity for shared parking. I don't think there's anything more wasteful than a parking stall that's used 8 hours. That doesn't make any sense at all. And I think we have a great opportunity with the new developments to make sure that shared parking, and I know that's already a part of the plan, but that shared parking is really protected so that you're able to use it as well. I think the other opportunity we have, if we think about this, is by bringing more people in during the day and by allowing and having more housing units so close by, we're going to have more patrons for you, for the restaurants, and for every other facility that's downtown that is looking for customers. So I actually think the parking is something that can be pushed into a really important opportunity for all of our institutions and our businesses downtown.
Councilmember Peralez.
Thank you. And this answer actually is fairly easy because the answer is yes. We have today a contractual legal agreement to be able to provide just under 3,000 parking spaces, and that'll bump up to just over 3,000 parking spaces in a radius around the SAP Center. And that's a contractual binding agreement that we have with the SAP Center, and I absolutely intend to adhere to that. We have a lot of opportunities to be able to do so. I couldn't tell you today where those new parking lots or parcels or where the new developments may be where we will have the shared parking, because we absolutely need to have that unbundled shared parking. It makes no sense, as Supervisor Chavez said, to build a new development or an office space and then have those parking spaces be empty. So I don't think any one of us can tell you today where those parking spaces exactly will be, but I can tell you, based on the commitment that the city has made to Shark Sports and Entertainment, that we will meet that commitment. We intend to fully, and as the next mayor, I absolutely fully intend to meet that as well.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I have a very similar answer. We have an arena management plan, and it's important to keep our promise in that plan to have the number of accessible spaces within a third of the mile of the SAP Center. Developments in this area, or anywhere really in the downtown, are required to provide adequate parking for their site and or a transportation demand management plan to ensure they know how people are going to travel to and from their site and what the impact on our transportation infrastructure is. Google has committed to both of those things, so thousands of parking spaces and a transportation demand management plan in their development agreement with the city. And I'm mentioning Google because they are going to have most of the area around in the immediate vicinity of the SAP Center. And their transportation demand management plan is backed up with fines if they don't meet their goals. So we would have some additional cash. But they've been successful getting their employees to use transit and to come in other ways to their Mountain View campus. And their Mountain View campus is a couple of miles from the Caltrain station, instead of just within walking distance or within spitting distance of the Caltrain station, as it will be here. So I'm confident, especially having worked with Supervisor Chavez on the Caltrain board, that we're electrifying Caltrain and able to have more frequent service, that a number of people will be able to do transit here, but also that there will be adequate spaces available for parking.
Councilmember Mahan.
I'm going to try to simplify this one. So we're talking about the loss of parking. We're going to lose thousands of spaces of surface parking. As we grow, the answer is to be more efficient with our use of space. The answer is going to be that between the city, the Sharks, and Google, we're going to build up. We're going to build a parking garage that's going to go up, It's going to have a lot of ingress and egress so we can move a lot of cars in and out. You're going to have to prepay for your parking and have sensors so that you don't get stuck at the gate with a ticket on the way out. And we're just going to have to make the best of it. We're going to have to build a parking structure within walking distance of the arena. There's no viable alternative. And the cool thing is we can build it in such a way that in 50 years from now, when we're all flying around in drones or whatever we're doing and we're not driving, we can convert it into an apartment building. They actually do that now. So we can design parking garages for future uses as commercial or residential or whatever else, but the truth is we're just the only way to solve this that I can figure that's at all feasible given that 90+% of you, all of us, came by car, is going to be a parking garage that goes up and helps a lot of people move in and out efficiently and park within walking distance. Oh, am I first again?
Yes, you are. So we're going to be talking about, during the Dearborn area specific plan, the DSAP, the city did a bunch of surveying. And in those surveys, the public responded that they wanted to see the arena protected. And our question for our mayoral candidates is, do you agree with those residents, and how do you plan to do that as mayor? Do you support creation of a council plan to protect SAP Center during the build out of the Dearborn area over the next decade? And Councilmember Mahan, you lead off.
Yes, I do, and I think that the components of the plan have to include the things we've talked about tonight, and then I'm going to add a third thing. So one is managing the transportation system so that as we are building and densifying and very much changing how this side of downtown west looks, we are on top of the issues around traffic and parking and how you all are going to get here for the 150 or more events a year that are held in this arena. So that's part of it. So it's the traffic, it's the system for moving people around, it's the parking, but I'll be bold and add a third piece, which is that over time, if we're going to keep the Sharks in the arena here and be a good partner, I'd like to see them have more skin in the game. And I think in the long run, the answer is to work with the ownership to try to get them to actually become a greater investor in our city. They've already done tremendous things here, but they don't own the dirt under the arena. And this will take time to work out, but in the long run, I want to make sure they're incentivized to be here for the next 50 years and to share in the benefits of the economic growth that's going to happen here. And ultimately, we're going to have to do big things together, including that parking garage and expanding transit options. And I think the city's got to come to the table and be a great partner to the Sharks to make sure that they want to stick around and continue to invest in our community.
Supervisor Chavez.
I think that there's no doubt that we need a plan that is going to be both protective of the SAP Center, I think protective of the residents, the small businesses in the area, and everybody else that's going to be dramatically impacted by construction. The other thing I would just offer is that, I think people who have been watching the Sharks for a while know that one of the most effective public-private partnerships the city has invested in it has been our partnership with the Sharks. This is a 30-year project, and I will tell you that people here were so enthusiastic to get the Sharks to come in the first place, and I think it has paid off for us in dividends, not just with helping to keep downtown alive when it was very challenging to do that, making sure that the restaurants around here could stay alive. I think the partnership has been one that's benefited both very well. I think the next phase of this is really going to be, as we think about the protection, is really to think about what's the next generation for the Sharks, what are the next things that are going to be happening for the businesses and the next things that are going to be happening for the residents. We want to make sure people aren't displaced, but we also want to make sure this place gets enhanced. And one of the things we're going to have to think about is, what's the new arena look like? What does it feel like? How does it fit into the area that we're in? And I look forward to having those discussions.
Councilmember Peralez.
Yeah, thank you. First, I want to say I thought we were getting boring when I saw a couple of these gentlemen take off and leave. Then I saw them come back with popcorn and drinks. So thank you. Thank you very much. It's much more than just preserving and protecting what the SAP Center means to us today. It is actually about helping to ensure that what the SAP Center can mean to our city is to continue to be, again, that vibrant, thriving hub that helps to enliven our downtown. And I think we need to be better partners together to ensure that we can get there. We have kept this building extremely competitive, as it is one of the most aged buildings in the NHL. And we have kept it extremely competitive, even when we have environments around us like San Francisco and Oakland. We need to double down on that effort if we're going to continue to see the effectiveness, the thrivingness that comes out of this building. We need to be thinking ahead. And in fact, I think that needs to include potentially a new arena, right? Because we will come to the expiration date. As much as we are keeping this strapped together, and it is a terrific building, that has to be a reality, and likely is going to be under the term and the tenure of the next mayor to work through with the Sharks. And I look forward to creating that opportunity so that we have another thriving arena for another 30 years.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Yes, I absolutely value the relationship that we have with Shark Sports and Entertainment and the city. And it's important for us to keep this arena or any new arena in top of mind as we are developing Downtown West. As I said, there is no other arena that has had its neighborhood transform around it. And so it is really important for us to ensure that we have adequate parking during the time of construction, that we have adequate access during the time of construction, that we ensure that people can still come to events. I also think we do need to work together to promote transit for the patrons of SAP Center. I know I have to admit that I live a mile away from here, and we still drive to the SAP Center for probably about half of the events we attend, and then we either walk or scooter or bike the other half, but sometimes we're just lazy. Or we don't plan ahead, right? Because it only takes 5 minutes to get here as opposed to the 15 or 20 that it would take with our feet or our bikes. And so working together with the city, I know that we have the opportunity to help people learn about different ways to come here, and that will ensure the vitality even through the little bit of dust that there's going to be happening here over the next 10 years. Thank you.
This concludes our question and answer session, and we're going to move into closing statements. And Councilmember Peralez?
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening, for being interested and engaged in who your next mayor will be. I was a little bummed we didn't have more attendance like a Sharks game, but I am very, very appreciative. This is by far the most exciting forum that we have had. So thank you as well, Jonathan, and to Shark Sports and Entertainment for allowing us to have this conversation tonight. I believe, and I've said this many times, that all four of us and three of my colleagues here are qualified and truly passionate about wanting to lead our city. What we all bring are different personal and professional perspectives and bring those forward. And for me, I have been a lifelong public servant, dedicated to serving our city, as I mentioned, as a teacher, as an emergency medical technician, as a police officer, and now as a council member. And for me, the challenges that we face are truly, truly personal, because I want to continue to be able to live with my city here, or with my family here in this city for years to come. And unfortunately, because of the issues that we're facing, we're seeing people driven out of our city on a regular basis. I want to ensure that we can turn the tide on homelessness, make this city affordable for all of us to live, make it the safest big city in the country once again, and be able to ensure that as we grow and develop, we do so sustainably and equitably so we can create a San Jose for all of us. Thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, and thank you, Scott, for moderating tonight, and thank you, Jonathan, and your team for having us. I started out this evening by saying that big problems only get bigger, but I think we've had a lot of good discussion here tonight that shows that big problems don't have to remain big problems when we work together. They can actually be opportunities. We do have an opportunity to become a safe, clean, and thriving city. And Downtown West is a huge opportunity for the SAP Center and for the Sharks and for all of us residents of San Jose to enliven our city and to really give us more resources for better services in the city of San Jose. I actually grew up in North Dakota. I was born and raised there. And my husband and I found our home here 18 years ago in San Jose. Now, I moved here to get away from snow, but it is nice to still have some indoor ice to be able to watch hockey. And we're proud to be raising our 2 California natives, our son and daughter, who are both teens now, here. And we've been coming here since they were little, first to Disney on Ice and the circus when it was here. And it's been a huge part of their first concerts and all kinds of activities that we've done with our kids and with each other throughout our time in San Jose. And I'm just so proud to be here this evening, and I'm just so thankful that we have this great gem in our city. Thank you.
Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you again for having us, and thank you for moderating. Thank you all for taking the time to be here. I love our city. We lead the country in innovation and diversity, family-friendly neighborhoods, not to mention our great weather. This is a great place to live. And yet, on so many issues, we're heading in the wrong direction. And when it comes to local government, I think we deserve better. When I was building my company, I had to go to a board of directors every 90 days and justify my job, show the results that we had driven. And I want to bring that culture of accountability to City Hall, where we're setting goals, we're measuring performance, we're failing faster and admitting when things that we're doing aren't working or they're too expensive or they're not scalable enough. I think you deserve a government that is more nimble, more efficient, and delivering the results that we need. And today, I'm not seeing that as I drive around the city, and I suspect most of you aren't seeing that either. So we're calling our campaign a revolution of common sense. We've got a whole platform with a bunch of specific solutions, and I hope whether you have your phone with you this evening or when you get home, I hope you'll go to mahanforsanjose.com, learn a little more about our campaign, and let us know if you want to host a house party or put out a lawn sign or come out and knock on doors with us. We'd love to get you involved in our revolution for common sense. Thanks again for being here.
Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you. I too want to say thank you to Scott and to the Sharks and Jonathan, to you and your team for getting us together, and for all of you who took time away from your families to be with us. You know, I too want to just echo something that Councilmember Peralez said about, having folks that are really committed to the city. The reason that I've chosen to run for mayor is because I know from my work at the county and my work at the city that genuine leadership really can save lives. Working with all of you, we made San Jose and Santa Clara County the most vaccinated large city and large county in the country. And I want to say a very special thank you to the Sharks, because they were one of our first testing sites. They helped us and sent young people to get vaccinated by giving away Bad Bunny tickets, which is how I learned who Bad Bunny was, and Harry Styles apparently. But that kind of leadership, that kind of partnership is something that we need if we're going to address, making San Jose the safest big city in America again, as it was when I served on the council, really addressing homelessness. We aren't where we need to be. There is so much more that we can do. But we've housed 14,000 people since 2015. That tells you how big the problem is and how hard we're going to have to work to resolve it, to build more affordable housing and to make San Jose clean again. I'm looking forward to working with all of you to make San Jose shine again. Thank you.
That concludes our mayoral forum. Please join me in thanking our 4 terrific mayoral candidates. I'd also like to thank terrific timekeeping, all of the SAP Center staff that helped bring this event together. You saw earlier the website, futureofsapcenter.com. Please refer to that for updates on these important topics. And thank you again for your participation in making this wonderful city even better. Good night.